All right. And let me know, please ask questions along the way. Let me know if any clarification is needed, but we'll just dive in to the module 2 presentation first and then 3. All right, where do I go? All right. So chapter 5 is about motivation. So when thinking about motivation, it's there's a lot of research and a lot of findings that it stems from your childhood. When I think back to what I chose to study in college, where I wanted to be in my life as a professional, where I wanted to live geographically, it all goes back to different motivators that I had early on, whether it was what I was exposed to in school, the relationships that I had with friends, the relationship and motivation of the family. So really a lot connects back to those early stages. And for others, I know negative situations can even be more powerful motivators than positives, right? Just because you want to overcome certain challenges, you want to make sure that you adapt and put yourself in a better position as an adult. So with that, it's, motivations can be internal, they can be from family, but many professional motivators do stem back to your days in grade school, which is a good thing to know when evaluating the self when we go through those topics in the text. When you think about motivation, the book also has a great example. I believe it's on page 76 or so, about a fire. So you think about the fire starter. What's the foundation of the fire? You have the wood, you have the paper, you have cardboard, right? And that's something that's stable, that's going to start the fire in many circumstances. And that's one of those translatable topics to your parents, to your family, to others growing up. Once it gets started, the flame is what has to be sustained. So based on that foundation, what are you going to do to keep the flame going? And then when, in the example in the book, when you put more wood on it, when you continue to grow the fire and build the flames, you're seeking other resources. So yes, your family's great, and your family or your friends or whatever it is got the fire going, but what are you doing to add the wood to sustain the flame going forward? Whoops, why did that go backwards? All right. Other factors with motivating people, think about vital needs, the influence of others. In esports specifically, there are a few key motivators that keep you going. Some performers out there, especially on more that professional level, attention is a big driver. Are they getting the clicks? Are they having the following that they're looking for through social media? When money comes into play, no matter what your career is, money can be a pretty powerful motivator. So in esports, what are you doing to stay involved, to compete? Are you getting sponsorships through streaming services? Are you going to competitions? And with that as well comes the element of fear. If you're getting nervous, how are you going to get over that hump to compete, to make sure that you're still sustaining that income, that financial flow, and the attention that you're getting from the audience? With this too comes persistence. So the ability just to continue to compete, to engage, to improve your skills. We talked about that in the tactic and strategy lesson, but making sure that you stay driven and focused and keep on going towards, keep on growing as an individual is a key motivator. Because once you fail, and if you don't rebound and you just say, you know what, this isn't for me, I mean, what happened along the way? So look back in the core, find other motivators to keep you going along. And with that, that's where open-mindedness comes into play, because it is so important to be adaptable, to change your strategies, to create new tactics, to learn the game in more of a holistic view. So with all those factors, open-mindedness can really help you get beyond the rut that you may be in along the way. And then we look to, in the text, heroes. So when you think about the people you look up to, how did they get to where they were? So when you bring that to more of a smaller environment, such as your team or the esport team or the basketball team, whatever it is, just because you're a coach or an assistant coach or a team captain, that doesn't necessarily mean others are going to respect you like you think they might or should in that role. So that's where you have to build trust, build a relationship. Remember that you all are, fighting for the same thing. So building a reputation is so pivotal, not just in esports, but traditional sports and the work environment as well. And that's where others are going to look up to you, and you're really going to be able to have a big influence at the end of the day. Talk about perfection, and looking at the product. How are you looking at the different games and the competitions? It's a little bit of mastery. It's kind of an art once you get good at a certain game and a certain competition. And then that's where that influence can kind of go on to motivate others based on your skills within. Something else that I believe there might be a quiz question on this, motivational speech. It's always good. It's always good to be a motivator of your peers. And yes, you can do that through planning, through meetings and all that, but just even when things are going downhill with the team, make sure that you're that positive role model and instilling confidence in others along the way. Any questions on chapter 5, I believe, or anything from wrapping up module 2? All right, we'll transition in to module 3. And I think I said module 3 was chapters 5, 6, and 7. It's actually 6, 7, and 8. So that was chapter 5. The next one, chapter 6, focuses on describing core concepts of sociological issues in esport, and most importantly, the self. Out of the entire text, I think this is the most comprehensive chapter. We'll go back to this section in obviously the upcoming quiz and the discussions, but the discussions moving forward are going to go back to challenge you in how you think and approach different situations. So first off is attention. And with that, it's about making a connection with the presenter, with the game, with the lecture, with whatever it is, to really fully invest. And one of the things that I learned at a young age, eye contact is one of the key indicators in interpersonal communication to show that you have gained the attention and engagement with the other party. One of my, I believe it was my second grade teacher, once told me, like she was talking to me and I was probably off my own word, and she's like, Kyle, you're not listening with your eyes. And out of everything I learned in elementary school, that's the one thing that really stuck with me to adulthood. Show that you're engaged, be active, listen. And I know in online learning, it can be very challenging to pay attention. I'm on meetings every day where I have 2 screens going on, and I see something pop up on the other screen while I'm in a Zoom call talking to an individual. Then I get distracted and start going in this other world. Then I sat back and shoot, what all do we discuss? So especially in this virtual environment, and I know with gaming, like just talking to my son when he's playing a game, nothing is settling in, but when I engage in eye contact, it just resonates. So make sure that you are, actively listening with your eyes in different team settings as well as online learning. Now, the try it out activity for module 3 is purely stemming off this slide right here. So might want to take a screenshot of this or go back or go back and reference this PDF after I load it on the class. But there are different games that you play. So when you think about how celebrities address themselves in media, when you watch people on social media, when you think about competing against others, whether it's playing flag football with friends, backyard basketball, gaming. People kind of take on these different roles, which really go to their inner personality and self, that change the elements of the game. So just to really walk through some of these, you'll be tested on some of these different personalities. So some individuals have a menacing style. That's when they try to provoke or dig into others by instilling fear. Blabbermouth, people try to dominate meetings, conversations, competitions just by talking and getting in your head. For me, out of all these, a blabbermouth might be one of the most distractive, because it's taken away the intention or the attention that I'm trying to put into the game, put in the meeting, put in whatever it is. And if someone's just chattering, talking, that can be pretty distractive, which is kind of a good technique if you're the one capable of doing that. A provocateur tries to be different at all costs. So if you think about some professional athletes, or especially like in boxing, you might see individuals that are really doing some pretty outrageous things to stand out and to drive attention to themselves and get in the head of others. That's what that provocateur approaches. Porcelain doll is leading with beauty and style to draw attention to themselves. Adventure, kind of self-explanatory there. Looking to go above and beyond to be competitive, to really engage themselves on a different level. Inquisitor digs into others through interrogation and conversation. So compared to that menacing approach where you're putting fear in others, an inquisitor is you're just digging into the individual, asking questions, trying to uncover their tactics, plans, strategies, just by breaking them down that way. The poor me approach is trying to earn pity of others. Secretive, naturally there. More of a strategic approach, where might be more of an introverted individual, and when it comes to planning, when it comes to building tactics as a team, they might have more of the strategy laid out compared to some of these other styles. And at the end of the day, regardless of what character you might play or how you adapt and lead as an individual, in esport, in traditional sport, or whatever, everybody on the team needs to be recognized, needs to be a part of the conversation, even if their goals and approach is different than yours. Then another area of this is the queen syndrome with attention. The ego gets skewed over time, and expectations kind of change once individuals have more of a certain status. So it could be a colleague that has received certain accolades in their career. Once people kind of get rewarded in different ways, they might be challenging people to work with if their own ego is starting to skew the reality of what it means to be a team player. And with this too, success is a result of hard work. Some go back to professional athletes. Many pro athletes have a hard time balancing this recognition, and when they get to more of that queen level in terms of how the community views them, this is where you see a lot of individuals acting out, having issues on social media, but goes back to how they balance their ego and put it in check. In the self we know section, truly, we can be our own worst enemy. I'm sure you two know that. Spence even brought up, man, I was trying to had a tough week balancing moving and class and these other responsibilities. So when you have all these complications in play, how are you going to overcome that? And that's one of those big things that that the text keeps on talking about, is what you're going to do to create more of a plan, create a schedule, deliver certain tactics. What is, if you're struggling in the class or if you're struggling in competition, is it your environment? Do you need to be more isolated? Do you need to have more conversations, whether it's with classmates, me, the coach of the team, whatever it is? And if you're having a tough time, just ask for help. And even though kind of with the ego, sometimes it's hard to ask others ask others for help when you're struggling, but that is a key factor in esport, that you can't let things build up inside, because it could be destructive to the team, and most importantly, destructive to yourself on different emotional and physical levels. Not really going to dig too much into this, but make sure you look at page, I believe 98 or something, where they're comparing the outer self to the inner self. What is where are the impacts being made internally? How are you adapting internally? What are your internal drivers? But also externally, what are some of those key things that are happening that are driving you to perform, that are going to lead you to make the right decisions? So it could come with positive reinforcement. It could come with acceptance and changing things with open-mindedness internally. So this is a good table to refer back to, especially when you're looking at some of those sociological concepts, how these resonate inward, but also outward for the greater community. And ego, I already talked about that a few times, but it's a constant driver for motivation. With ego, sometimes there can be a gap in terms of what you think you need to be doing with really what you should be doing toward a certain task. So it is good to get your ego in check sometimes, just to make sure you're approaching it as the reality that it is, compared to having possibly unreasonable expectations for a certain activity, competition, assignment, so on from there. And then for the inner self, like we just showed on the last table, the way that your inner self processes information traditionally goes through your ego first. So even though you have these intrinsic values and drivers, your head may get in the way in terms of how you're going to adjust or approach a certain situation, especially if it's outward facing. So what happens is when you have a conversation with someone, when you experience failure, when you experience challenges on a team, what are you going to do to put that ego in check to look to those inner values? So that's what the whole filtering really talks about in the text in that. Having harmony with the ego, your ego really leads by example. That's what builds your ego. That's what builds your confidence in different ways. So it may be challenging to balance the expectations that you have in yourself and that others have in you. So in esport and all sports, going back to that, it's about how you're going to balance and open up that mindfulness to take on different situations. The mirror effect, this is one of my favorite examples in the text as well, is when it comes to failure, it's easy to flame and blame teammates. It's easy to blame colleagues if there's a miscommunication. When I work with students on interview preparation, when I ask a student, hey, tell me about a time that you failed or you experienced failure, over 90% of the time, students respond with a fault of someone else. The professor didn't communicate clearly. I was on this team and this person didn't show up to anything. We lost, if things happened differently, if this individual did something different, we would have been in a better spot. Companies do not want to hear that when you're interviewing for a job, and teammates don't want to hear that when you're breaking down activities after the fact. So what the mirror effect is before you go to vocalize those frustrations, think about it. Look at yourself. Were you a part of the issue that arose? Even if it was someone else's fault, how have you adapted, or how will you adapt to overcome that? So let's say in let's say in SMT 240, the class on event planning, facilities and event planning, you're going to be doing a group project down there. So there might be a team of 3 or 4. If someone, let's say, doesn't show up, doesn't engage, doesn't contribute to the level that you would expect, okay, yes, that's a challenge and it's easy to blame them, but what are you going to do to motivate them? What are you going to do to adjust the motivations and expectations that you have along the way, and how are you going to overcome that as an individual and a team member? So I know we kind of went off the path of group work and even like what I hear from student interviewing there, but before blame is placed, look within, see how you can adapt to make sure it's others are succeeding and it's not taking down the emotions of others as well. And final slide, when it comes to the goal of self, let's go back to the very first chapter of the text when it comes to setting those values, when it comes to identifying goals. Where are you going to receive satisfaction along the way, and continue to go back to make sure that you're following those goals and you're following those pillars, or you're looking to see what you need to do to adapt. And with that, it could be the people around you, it could be the way that you invest your time, just varies in different environments, but continue to look at those goals that you set in your very first assignment in the course and what you're doing to work towards those inside and out of the classroom, compared to forgetting and just making a path up as you go. So with that, I don't have any other